My mother always said that blood is thicker than water. She used it as a shield whenever we fought, or as a reason to forgive the unforgivable. For 30 years I believed her. I believed that the man sitting across from me at every Christmas dinner, the man who taught me how to drive and walked me down the aisle, was the source of my own DNA. But a simple lab report doesn't care about family loyalty. A lab report only cares about science. They say the hardest thing about a secret isn't keeping it. It's living with the person who's keeping it from you. My father, David, was a man of routines. Every Saturday at 10 a.m., he'd be in the garage, the smell of sawdust and old motor oil clinging to his flannel shirt. He'd spend hours restoring old clocks, making sure every gear and spring was perfectly aligned. He taught me that if you take care of the small things, the big things take care of themselves. But while he was fixing those clocks, time was ticking away on a lie he'd been telling since before I was born. A secret is only a secret if you're the only one who knows it. In my family, we didn't have secrets, or so I thought. We had traditions. Sunday dinners, summer trips, and a silence so loud it eventually brought the whole house down. My name is Sarah, and for 30 years, I was under a lie covered with a truth that wasn't mine to tell. If you asked anyone in Oak Creek about David Miller, they'd tell you he was the most honest man they knew. He was the kind of man who would drive 5 miles back to a grocery store because the cashier forgot to charge him for a pack of gum. He spent his retirement in our garage, surrounded by the steady tick-tock of 100 different clocks. He said he liked clocks because they didn't know how to lie. They either told the truth or they were broken. There was no middle ground. I grew up in the rhythm of that honesty. It was the floorboards beneath my feet. So, when I started organizing his medical files for his valve replacement surgery, I wasn't looking for a mystery. I was just being a nurse. I was being a good daughter. It was 11:45 p.m. The house was silent, except for the hum of the refrigerator. I was cross-referencing his latest labs with his historical records from the 90s. I wanted to make sure the surgeon had a full picture of his blood chemistry. I flipped open a dusty folder from 1994, the year I had my appendix out. There it was. A standard pre-op report for a minor procedure he'd had back then. I glanced at the blood type. Type O negative. I froze. I'm a nurse. I know the Punnett square of genetics like the back of my hand. My mother is type AB. In the world of biology, a type AB mother and a type O father cannot, under any circumstances, produce a child with my blood type, type B positive. The math didn't just feel wrong. It felt like the floor had suddenly turned into water. I didn't run out to the garage. I didn't scream. I'm a nurse. I'm trained to stay calm when the monitors start flatlining. Instead, I folded that piece of paper, that tiny physical proof that my life was a fiction, and I tucked it into the pocket of my scrub top. I felt it there, heavy against my hip, as I walked toward the attic stairs. If my father wasn't my father, then who was? And more importantly, who was my mother when she thought no one was looking? The attic smelled like dust and cedar. It was a graveyard of old versions of us. I found the 1990 to 1995 bin tucked behind a stack of my brother's old hockey gear. My heart was hammering against my ribs, a frantic rhythm that drowned out the ticking of the clocks downstairs. I expected to find a name, a photo, a classic affair cliché. But what I found was a stack of letters addressed to my mother, postmarked from a town 3 states away that we had never visited. They weren't love letters. They were formal, professional. They were from a law firm specializing in closed adoptions. My breath hitched. I wasn't just a secret biological byproduct. I was a legal transaction. And as I peeled back the edge of the first envelope, a photograph slid out. It wasn't of a man. It was a picture of a woman who looked exactly like me. Same eyes, same stubborn chin, holding a newborn in a hospital bed. The woman in the photo wasn't my mother. I came down from the attic with the phantom weight of that photograph burned into my retinas. I expected the house to feel different, but the linoleum was still cold, and the faucet still dripped. When my mother walked into the kitchen, I didn't see the woman who tucked me in for 30 years. I saw a stranger who had masterminded a 3-decade-long heist of my identity. "Sarah, you're still up." Her voice was like honey, sweet, but thick enough to choke you if you weren't careful. "Just making tea, Mom," I said. My voice sounded like it belonged to someone else. Dad's records are a mess. I was just looking back at some old stuff. I sat across from her, the table a wooden battlefield between us. I wanted to scream. I wanted to throw the DNA report on the table and watch her face crumble. But I needed to know how deep the lie went. "Mom," I started, tracing the rim of my mug. "Do you remember much about the hospital when I was born?" I was looking at my old pediatric charts. The ones from the city hospital. She didn't even flinch. She just smiled, that practiced, effortless mother smile. "Oh, honey, it was a whirlwind. It was a snowy night, and your father almost went into a ditch driving us there." "Why do you ask?" "No reason," I lied. The word tasted like ash. "Just thinking about how much I look like you." She paused. The knife she was using to peel the orange stayed still for just a fraction of a second too long. "You have my heart, Sarah. That's what matters." She didn't say I had her eyes. She didn't say I had her chin. She used a metaphor to avoid a biological fact. In that silence, I realized my mother wasn't just a liar. She was a professional. The kitchen door groaned and my heart stopped. There he was, David Miller, the man who had bandaged my scraped knees and taught me how to change a tire. He looked exactly the same as he did yesterday, but to me, he was suddenly a ghost. A stranger wearing my father's face. "Still up, kiddo? You and your mother are going to be zombies tomorrow," said my dad. He walked over and kissed the top of my head. Usually that gesture felt like safety. Tonight it felt like a brand. I looked at his hands, rough, calloused, and according to the paper in my pocket, genetically unrelated to mine. "Just finishing up the paperwork, Dad. I think I have everything I need." I did to him. He paused, looking at the folders. "Good. I trust you, Sarah. I know you'll take care of me. You've always been the one I can count on to see the truth, even when I can't." He meant it as a compliment, but it felt like a challenge. He walked away, the steady thump-thump of his boots on the stairs sounding like a countdown. I looked at my mother. She was watching him go, a look of profound, terrifying relief on her face. She thought she was safe. She thought the secret was back in the attic. My father thinks I see the truth. My mother thinks I believe her lies. They both think this family is built on a foundation of stone. But tonight I found the crack. And tomorrow I start pulling it apart. Hospitals are full of ghosts. Not the kind that rattle chains, but the kind made of paper and digital ink. Every birth, every death, every miracle is logged in a database that never forgets. Usually, I'm the one entering the data. Tonight, I was the one hunting it. I waited until the 3 a.m. lull. That dead space in the night when even the trauma ward holds its breath. I logged into the archives. I wasn't looking for Sarah Miller. I was looking for any woman admitted to St. Jude's on October 14, 1994, who didn't leave with the baby she carried in. There were 12 births that night. 11 mothers went home with baby girl or baby boy. But the 12th file was different. Patient Rebecca Vance, age 22, admitted in active labor. Under the notes section, there was a jagged, handwritten scan from the attending physician. Patient expressed extreme distress, refused to hold infant, discharge processed via private legal counsel. My heart did a slow, painful roll in my chest. Rebecca Vance. That was the name on the law firm letters. But there was something else, a medical note about the infant's blood type. Type B positive. My blood type. My mother's lie wasn't just a secret. It was an erasure of this woman's existence. In the hospital, we call it informed consent. It's the ethical bedrock of everything we do. You don't touch a patient, you don't take a sample, and you certainly don't change their life without their permission. But as I stood outside my mother's bedroom door, the nurse in me was losing the argument to the daughter who had been lied to for 30 years. I didn't want consent. I wanted the truth. She looked so fragile in the dark. This was the woman who stayed up with me when I had the flu, the woman who cried at my graduation. Was that all a performance? Or can you love someone completely while keeping them in a cage of lies? I waited for her mouth to fall open slightly, a habit she's had since I was a kid. My heart was thumping so hard I was sure it would wake her. One quick swipe. That's all it takes to rewrite a history book. I reached out, the plastic stick hovering inches from her cheek. Mrs. Elena, mumbling in her sleep, turning over, "David, is she okay?" I froze. My lungs burned as I held my breath. She wasn't talking to my father in the room. She was dreaming of the past. Is she okay? Who was she asking about? Me? Or the woman in the photograph? I retreated into the shadows, the unused swab clutched in my hand like a weapon. I wasn't ready to fire. I was halfway out the door when I saw it. My mother is a woman of surfaces. Everything in its place, every secret tucked behind a smile. But there on her nightstand was a lapse in judgment. A small lacquer box I had never seen before. The key was still in the lock, a silent invitation to commit the ultimate betrayal of privacy. I looked back at the bed. My father shifted, his heavy snoring skipping a beat before resuming its steady mechanical rhythm. I didn't think, I just moved. My fingers touched the cold wood and I turned the key. It didn't click, it hissed, a sound that felt like a scream in the dead silence of the room. Inside isn't jewelry, but a single folded yellowing envelope and a lock of dark hair tied with a red string. It wasn't a legal document. It was a letter, handwritten in a frantic slanted script that didn't belong to my mother. Elena, the letter began. I saw her in the park today. She has your eyes even if she has my spirit. I kept my promise. I stayed away, but the hole in my life is getting bigger every year. Please, just one photo, just so I know she's happy. There was no signature, just a date, August 12, 2005. I was 11 years old. My mother hadn't just adopted me. She had negotiated a disappearance. She had made a promise to a woman to keep me a secret from my own life. Wow, I've lived in this house for 3 decades. I know every creaking floorboard, every loose door handle, and every secret hiding spot for the Christmas presents. But I had never seen this box. It sat there like a silent witness, tucked away in the one place I would never look, right beside my mother's head while she slept. It wasn't jewelry. It was too heavy, the wood too old. It was a time capsule. The nurse in me screamed to leave, to walk out, go to work, and pretend I never saw the DNA report. But the daughter in me, the girl who was built on a foundation of typo lies, needed that key. I moved like a shadow, my fingers hovering over the porcelain dish. The clink of the metal felt like a gunshot in the silent room. I grabbed it. I didn't look back. I expected gold. I expected a birth certificate. But when the lid creaked open, all I found were scraps of a life that had been cut to pieces. A hospital bracelet with the name Vance roughly snipped off, a lock of hair lighter than mine, and a single handwritten note on a piece of yellowed stationery. It only had 5 words on it, written in a shaky, desperate hand. Please, just let her be happy. It wasn't a transaction. It wasn't a legal closed adoption through a firm. My parents hadn't followed the law. They had followed a woman's desperation. And as I looked at the date on the back of the note, October 15, 1994, I realized that for 30 years I wasn't just Sarah Miller. I was the secret that kept my mother from going to prison. I didn't have to look through the peephole. I knew the weight of that hand on the wood. It was the same hand that had smoothed my hair during fevers and packed my school lunches. But now that hand was looking for something it had lost. Or rather, something I had stolen back. I hadn't even had time to process the note before the lie came knocking on my door, demanding to be let back in. Elena, give it back, Sarah. Her voice isn't angry, it's terrified. It's the voice of a woman watching her world dissolve. Sarah, give what back, said my mom. The key? Or the 30 years you took from me? I replied. She pushed past me into the kitchen. She saw the box. She saw the lock of hair and the yellowed note. For a second, she looked like she might collapse. Then the mask she'd worn since 1994 finally cracked. We saved you, Sarah. That said my mom. Do you have any idea what kind of life Rebecca was heading for? She was a child herself, alone with nothing. She begged us. She didn't want the state to take you. She wanted us. You didn't save me, Mom. You bought a clean conscience and a perfect life. Did you ever think I had a right to know her? Did you think about the fact that my entire medical history is a blank page because you wanted to play house? It wasn't about the law, Sarah. Mom said. It was about him. Your father, David. He was so broken after we lost the first 3 pregnancies. I thought if I didn't bring a baby home that October, he wouldn't survive it. I didn't just do it for you. I did it to keep him whole. For a moment, I realized then that my perfect father, the man in the garage fixing clocks, was the only one truly innocent in this. He believed the lie because he needed to. My mother had carried the weight of the crime so he wouldn't have to carry the weight of the grief. I had the power to destroy them both. I could call the police. I could find Rebecca. I could shatter the man in the garage into 1,000 pieces. But I looked at that note again. Just let her be happy. I'm going to find her, Mom. I'm going to find Rebecca. Not to replace you, but because I'm done living in a clock that stopped. And you? You're going to be the one to tell Dad. Not me. You. I left her there. I left my mother sitting at her pristine white kitchen table, surrounded by the evidence of her greatest sin and her greatest sacrifice. As I drove, I realized that the hardest part of finding out your life is a lie isn't the lie itself. It's the memories that now feel like counterfeit bills. Every birthday party. Every time she held my hand when I was scared of the dark. Was she loving me, or was she loving the successful project she'd managed to hide from the world? I needed air. I needed a version of the truth that didn't have her fingerprints all over it. I tracked down Nurse Gable. She was the one who signed the discharge papers for Rebecca Vance in 1994. She was 82 now, her own memories fading like old Polaroids. I sat by her bed, holding a photo of myself. Not the one from the attic, but a photo of me in my nursing scrubs. Hello, Mrs. Gable. My name is Sarah. You worked at St. Jude's. Do you remember a girl? October of '94? Rebecca? The old woman's eyes cleared for a second. A spark of recognition that chilled me to the bone. Nurse Gable replies. The girl with the blue ribbons in her hair. She cried for 3 days straight. She didn't want to let go, but the lady in the silk suit. She told her the baby deserved a house with a yard and a father who didn't drink. She told her she was doing a noble thing. The lady in the silk suit. My mother. My mother hadn't just waited for a baby. She had hunted for one. She had found a girl in her weakest moment and sold her a version of the future that didn't include her own child. It wasn't a rescue. It was a harvest. I had promised my mother I'd make her tell him. But as I looked at him, the man who believed I was his miracle, I realized that the truth is sometimes a weapon that kills the wrong person. He was about to have heart surgery. The truth wouldn't just hurt him. It could literally stop his heart. My dad, Sarah? You look like you've seen a ghost, honey. Is everything okay with the pre-op plans? This was it. The moment of no return. I had the documents in my bag. I had the DNA report. I had the story of the girl with the blue ribbons. I looked at the man who had been my father in every way that mattered, and I felt the weight of the secret shifting from my mother's shoulders to mine. Everything is fine, Dad. I found an old photo of us. From when I was a baby. You look so happy. He smiles, a distant look in his eyes. It was the best day of my life, Sarah. He replied, the day we brought you home. It was like the sun finally came out and stayed out. I don't know who I'd be without you. I didn't tell him. Not because I wanted to protect my mother, but because I realized that the secret I kept was no longer about her. It was about me. I am the gatekeeper now. I will let him go into that surgery believing he is the father of a woman who loves him. But as for Rebecca Vance, I found her. She's living 2 towns over. She works at a library. She never had another child. Next week, I'm going to that library. I'm going to walk up to the desk and I'm going to ask for a book. And when she looks at me, she's going to see her own eyes looking back. We won't call it an adoption. We won't call it a miracle. We'll call it what it is, a beginning. I had spent my whole life thinking my history was written in the stars, or at least in the framed photos on our mantle. I didn't know it was sitting in a public library in a town called Oakhaven, filed under R for Rebecca. I watched her from behind a stack of biographies. She was older, of course. Her hair was silvered at the temples, but she moved with a grace that felt familiar. It was the way I moved when I thought no one was watching. I had rehearsed 100 opening lines. Hi, I think you're my mother. Or do you remember October 1994? But standing there looking at her, all the words felt like lead in my mouth. She wasn't a case file anymore. She wasn't a secret. She was a woman who had lived 30 years with a hole in her heart that I was shaped exactly like. The silence between us was 30 years wide. When she looked up, the air left the room. It wasn't like a movie. There was no orchestral swell. There was just a sudden sharp intake of breath from a woman who looked like she had just seen a ghost. She didn't look at my clothes or my hair. She looked straight into my eyes, the eyes she had given me, and, Can I help you with something, miss?" said Rebecca. I'm looking for someone. I think she's been waiting a long time to be found." She dropped the scanner. The sound of it hitting the carpet was the loudest thing I'd ever heard. Her hands went to her mouth, and in that moment I didn't see the librarian. I saw the 22-year-old girl in the blue ribbons, crying in a hospital bed while my mother whispered lies about a better life. "They told me you'd have everything. They told me you'd grow up in a house with a piano and a father who would never raise his voice. They made me feel like keeping you was an act of selfishness, like I was hurting you just by being poor," said Rebecca. "I did have those things, Rebecca. I had the piano, I had the father, but I didn't have the truth. They built my life on a foundation of stolen pieces. Every time I looked in the mirror, I was looking for a face I wasn't allowed to know." As she spoke, I realized the secret I kept wasn't just my mother's. It was a societal secret. It was the way we treat women who are struggling, and the way we allow the perfect families to buy their way into a narrative they didn't earn. Rebecca told me about the night I was born, how the lady in the silk suit, my mother, had sat by her bed and held her hand, not out of kindness, but to make sure she didn't change her mind. People ask me if I hate my parents now. The truth is, it's more complicated than hate. I see them for what they are. Flawed, desperate people who loved me so much they were willing to commit a crime to keep me. But love isn't a get-out-of-jail-free card for the truth. I haven't told my father David. Not yet. His heart is too weak and his love is too pure. But my mother, we don't speak in whispers anymore. Every time she looks at me, she knows I know. The power dynamic has shifted. The daughter is now the guardian of the family's survival. My name is Sarah Miller. To the world, I'm a nurse, a daughter, a success story. But to myself, I am a woman who reclaimed her own beginning. The secret didn't destroy us. It just ended the fairy tale and started the real story. Comment if you love this story. Subscribe and hit the like button.